Welcome to Horror Makes Us Happy, the podcast where we ask the question, what is it about horror that makes us happy? Your hosts are Steve Becker and myself, Chris Whitman, and you can find out more about us at our website, horrormakesushappy.com. Speaking of that website, on that website, there are podcasts that you can listen to that contain content that may not be appropriate for children and or those that do not like such content. That's the trigger warning. We're going to be talking about horror content and horror-related things that could involve sensitive subjects such as, child abuse, murder, rape. There will be F-bombs. We've actually had quite a few F-bombs already. Hi, Patreon listeners. You got to listen to the preamble. So if that's not your cup of tea, go listen to something boring. But if not, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Coming up in the near future, we will be interviewing an author by the name of Paula D. Ash. But today, we have the company of Harry Horror, owner and, proprietor and guy that the thing is named after of the Harry Horror Show, which you can check out on Twitch.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for having me. And that's owner, operator, truck driver. If driving a truck was a Twitch show, that's how I like to phrase it to people who don't understand.
I'm sure there are.
That helps clear up a lot of the confusion I found with especially with the older folks. It's like driving a vehicle? No, not at all. But I want to get out of this conversation. So sure, beep, beep.
Right? Yeah, it's like driving a car. We'll go with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me, fellas.
You got to explain what Twitch is.
Yeah.
God, ain't that the truth? We probably have to do it now, don't we? I don't know if everyone on the podcast would know what Twitch is. Not to be mean or derogatory, just I've run across people my age who are like, well, you should probably get that checked out if you're twitching.
It's live YouTube?
Yeah, it's live YouTube. It's live YouTube.
Basically.
Used to have a focus on gaming, but it's kind of since expanded of late to accommodate chatting content, podcast content, talking content, among many other things. So I found it to be a really interesting look at almost like cable access TV or whatever it was.
Yeah, kind of.
True.
So
as is much everything with advancement in technology. Thank you, Twitch Thoughts, for expanding the platform.
Exactly. They're doing what they can.
They're doing the Lord's
on
work.
the edge stream at a time.
Yeah.
The internet is for porn.
Someone has to walk the edge of the seat so that all of us can say that we sat on the edge of ours.
Yes.
It's your profound wisdom for the day.
Yes.
I like it.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Exactly. That's a podcast. See ya.
Yes. It's been good talking to you. Well, I guess while we're at it, before we get into the rest of the stuff, why don't you tell listeners a little bit about what you do?
Sure.
And particularly your podcast, your Twitch show.
Yeah. So we say it's like a cable access TV show. What I do on my show, the Harry Horror Show on Twitch, is I tell true crime stories, discuss grim history occurrences, and paranormal stuff, paranormal events, things to that effect, of a phenomena. And it's very much like a podcast, and then it's all very narrative. I'm telling the story from beginning to end. But it's neat because rather than have to just listen, you also can see picture. There's also video of events as they occur. So I found it to be a pretty interesting supplemental medium where you're able to see the presenter almost like it was a YouTube video of the podcast uploaded, and also see pictures that go along with it and chat live, which is fantastic. So I tell a lot of true crime serial killer stories. I've done stories about terrorist attacks. In this December, I'm talking about the 2001 anthrax attacks that occurred that I think in all of our childhoods. And it's just been great because I've gotten to learn quite a bit about stuff that I think dominates the news cycle, especially when we were younger or in history books. And then again, to find out what actually happened has just been huge. I mean, it's my show, so of course I'm going to talk it up, but I've actually really enjoyed getting to dive into a lot of it myself as well. Real life horror is certainly nothing compared to movies, but movies could probably take a lot from real life horror as well.
And often do.
Do. Exactly.
Speaking of movies, basically the way that we do this is we break up the show into 3 or 4 segments. We talk about your childhood, adolescence, and teen and adult years, and then some wrap up questions at the end. Basically, focusing on what your experiences with horror in media have been, and a couple other things, and then try to figure out what it is about horror that you as an individual love. And the an eventual end goal is, after talking to a number of people, maybe starting to see if we start seeing some common themes in the things that draw people to horror.
Perfect.
So for you, starting with childhood, what were some of your earliest memories of scary things?
Yeah, I mean, for me, always been scared of the dark. I mean, I had a pretty not rough, but just like childhood where it's divorced parents, very strict step parents. So a lot of being grounded, a lot of just having to work off or leaving a pin in my pants or ruining a pair of dress pants or just dumb horse shit like that kind of comes. I think a lot of maybe step kids know what I'm talking about, but really when it came to horror, always been scared of the dark. And I think too, I mean, if we're really already getting into psychoanalyzing, growing up with such that kind of childhood, in all seriousness, can lead someone to feel like they're very out of control. Like they don't have autonomy over many of the things in their own life. Every Tuesday and Wednesday, you're being shuttled over to one of the other parents' house. And then, when you're over there, someone's been in your room and gone through all your shit. And then you can't really tell, but something's off. I think a lot of it kind of lends itself to a fascination or maybe a preoccupation with things that are out of control, things that rob us of our autonomy. And that kind of adds a scary piece, because the dark itself is something that I think makes us scared, not only because of what we can't see, but it also limits our options. Being in the dark gives us an inability to control our surroundings, because we lack that foundational piece of like, I know what's going on, and so I can act accordingly. When you don't, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
So,
you're absolutely right.
Too far into the weeds, but that's what sticks out to me.
That's exactly what the show is about. And you're right. I never really thought about that aspect of it. I'm a child of divorced parents as well. I think they divorced when I was like 4 or 5. So luckily I was young enough that I didn't have to like really mentally deal with it. But it does kind of put you by default in that scenario of just things being out of place, things being not the norm, and things being out of your control even more so.
Yeah. You don't really realize it until especially if you mix in like what I did, like with the childhood growing up in the Catholic Church. So you mix in like the guilt compound as well.
Oh yeah.
So you're never able to get quite a tack on anything. You really want to have a tack on things. But then on top of that, like when you don't, you're just racked with guilt all the time.
Because you're a sinner.
Yep. Yeah. It's a fun combination. Even when you move past organized religion and such, you still can't shake this feeling that like you're just out of control, and you're a bad person for being out of control. It's interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that too. Also, child of a divorced family and had fun with step parents. Although I will say that the thing about having your room ransacked and not having control over that, I know there are people who came from homes that did not have a divorce, but had a parent that was like a drill sergeant type of thing. There's no exclusive lock. We don't have the Divorced Children of America. The DCA does not have a lock on ransacked rooms. Yeah, there are some. I dated a girl once who told me that after doing something, I don't even remember what it was, but they took her bedroom door off the hinges.
Jesus. Yeah, that's classic.
Dude, the house I just moved into, a 120-year-old house, there were locks from the outside on all the upstairs rooms when we bought the place.
Oh, that's good. That's
kind of cool. It's a neat vibe.
If there's a carpet, rip it up. Make sure there's not like a weird pentagram on the floor or something like that. Just saying. Right. Just saying. But
between that and the blood on the carpet either.
Between that and the old termite damage that was hidden, it's a house of horror, one way or the other. Get that gnawing feeling.
Is it Harry's house of horror?
It is. It's the house that it's the house that Harry not built but bought. Regrettably, so
house may or may not have been built out of actual human being corpses.
Yep,
patent pending,
or on a ancient burial ground.
Exactly. I just did a segment on that, and it's fascinating how much that particular trope of the built on a burial mound thing. I always thought that was like a real thing. It's largely made up. Like,
seriously, it's never been done.
It's
like
mostly
maybe a couple
Hollywood
times at most.
No, they've been built on. I mean, that's definitely like the American experience. Just pave over, the entire new world. But a lot of Native American tribes with how they perceive the afterlife wouldn't like. There's like they aren't disturbed, or like disturbing. It's a huge sacrilege, but it's not in the I'm going to come back and haunt you sort of sense. That's a very like European thing. because European world, you're buried and you rise up to face Jerusalem at the end of times, and so desecrating a grave, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
There's some similarities in the Native American world, and not all tribes are the same. Everything is completely different, but we largely invented that up with our own Eurocentric concepts of that.
We kind of give it a Eurocentric flavor, whereas really it's a burial mound. They have a belief as far as where the soul goes after life, but as far as the corporeal form, it's into the earth, and it's not so much a vengeance offense. It's more like a upset guy at a soccer game meme offense. Like, really? Yeah.
It's still egregious. I mean, the pilgrims, robbed graves when they first landed. But it's not in the sense of like, we're not going to be Ghost of Christmas pasting you, So it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. But that's way off track. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
We personally may not, but the rest of the world will.
Yeah.
An imbalance, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
What about any particular horror media that stood out to you as a child?
So, from the people that brought you controlling parents, didn't really watch a whole lot of horror media. My stepsister, not stepsister, my babysitter, not stepsister, babysitter, watched The Shining one time, and I caught glimpses of it. And so I always had a fascination with The Shining. It's now one of my favorite horror movies, but for vastly different reasons. But a lot of my exposure to horror came at glimpses, small little pieces here and there. There's one movie, oh my God, it has these little round puff balls. They're like little round aliens that are like little balls, and they have razor sharp teeth.
Oh,
Critters?
I think it might actually be Critters. I think it might actually be Critters, the movie. Yes, it's Critters. And there's one scene when they're fucking in the barn. And and she's like, and it like bites either the dude or the gal's fingers off. And that like fed right into we don't put toes over the edge of the bed. Again, control over things you can't see. But that's also like a very like basic, I don't want my stuff bitten off sort of fear. So it's just shit like that, seeing Critters for the first time, or like seeing it like on TV. I didn't really ever have a whole lot of like horror movie we watched. We were a very science fiction-y house.
Okay. Science fiction can be scary at times too, though. Alien.
Oh, yeah. I would definitely say Alien was the first real horror movie, or one of the first real horror movies I watched. I didn't really get to expand out until I was, in my teen years.
Okay.
So, but
that's a good start.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you participate in Halloween as a kid?
Of course. Huge Halloween fan. Yeah. It's a weird dichotomy, right? They don't want you watching horror movies. But you can certainly go out trick or treating. I loved going out trick or treating. We were right on that tail end where it was like, well, let kids be kids and just roam. Now everyone helicopters. Speaking as helicopter parent, I understand the phenomena why people do what they do. But definitely it's a lost era, being able to just go out and you come back up like at like 11. God knows where you've been, but you got 2 pillowcases full of candy, and you're going to ride that high all the way into the next week. Easy.
I think it depends on how old you are, because obviously 5 or 6 you can't do that, but if you got a group of kids that are 12 or 13, that's potentially old enough that they can take care of each other.
When I was a kid, dude, we were out. The second we were able to ride bikes, it was go anywhere. Done. You're free as a jaybird. But most, you're right. The norm is to send the teens out, and that's probably what I'll do with my kids too. I live in a very small town, so I'll probably, let them rip like Beyblades when they're teens.
Did you have a favorite costume when you were a kid?
Honestly, no. I know it's such like a cop out answer. I know I dressed as like a ninja one time, like a yellow and black ninja. That's the only thing I can remember. So it must have been my favorite. I have really, really bad memory. Like I can give you maybe 3 childhood memories at most, and like a general synopsis of what happened. But I can barely remember what I ate yesterday. So it's like I don't know if just I'm stuck in the present, or like what's wrong with the VHS tape of my brain. But I'm just here, man. I have a hard time with some of the specifics. I was into Pokemon, or maybe I dressed up like as like a Pikachu or something. Who the hell knows?
Would explain the yellow and black.
Yeah.
So I don't suppose you remember a least favorite costume.
No, but I think the anything with masks was quickly a no-go, because that's just it's so hot. I grew up in Florida, so anything with masks. October's not fun like autumnal weather. It's just brutal, miserable.
Of course.
Yep.
Wet blanket weather.
Grew up in and still live in Florida. It's currently almost December, and I think it's like 70-ish outside.
It's 80 where I'm at. We're after this, we're gonna go swimming at my brother-in-law's house. Swimming in December.
In December.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're not in the southern hemisphere. Almost.
Feels like we're on a goddamn other planet, dude. Florida's in its own universe.
Yeah. Well, for multiple reasons.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you have any really scary dreams when you were a kid?
Yeah, actually, yes to that one. I have had persistent fear. I've had persistent dreams of falling out of a tree and my teeth falling out.
More loss of control, eh?
Yep. Almost every single night I have that similar dream.
I have never had the teeth falling out dream. I know that's it's almost a trope with dreams now, but yeah, never experienced it.
Yep, it's definitely one of those. Yes, I've read a dream guide before. That means, but like, yeah, as cheesy as it is, that be me, my boy.
So you still have those even today?
I have those almost every single night.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Was there any time when you were actually terrified of something in real life as a child?
No, I've lived a very very much like overbearing parents, but in that other regard, like very uneventful. Like I've done a lot of serial killer childhoods, and a lot of listen to a lot of viewers kind of like unburden some trauma. That's kind of the nature of the life form. As you're going to get some people sharing their stories.
No, just because parents are overbearing or helicopter parents doesn't mean that you don't have something scary happen when you're childhood.
Yeah,
so
but
it's still worth asking.
I was very sheltered childhood. Never was cool enough to get invited to any parties. Never really went out and did anything fun. Just very vanilla,
bland,
vanilla,
as they would say in the UK. Beige.
Exactly. Beige childhood. Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there ever a time in childhood when you felt completely calm or safe or blissful?
I think I found bliss in books and out in nature. Absolutely. I was in a Boy Scout, so I would go off and just go into the woods and just sit and just hang out and just because I think there is being removed from the variables, I think is very helpful. Growing up with ADHD too, at a time like in the 90s when it was a death sentence, not in the literal sense. Many people have had to go through true death sentence, like your entire AIDS community has been so they would scoff at my use of that, but it was not seen as a treatable thing. It was, Mike, I can't believe my kid has this. So I'm just removing myself and either playing video games or just that was a way to escape, I think. A very helpful way to escape and be safe.
You mentioned books. Any particular books that you felt that way with?
Honestly, there was Clive Barker's book. Barker's book series. You never finished. Clive, if you're listening, I swear to God, I will find you and I will politely suggest you finish it. It's the series called The Aberrat. And it has a young lady protagonist named Candy Quackenbush, and she goes to this plane of existence where it has 25 islands, every single one denotating a time of day, where 8 o'clock is perpetually 8 o'clock, and the je ne sais quoi that is 8, the vital essence of what 8 p.m. is, and then 12 in the afternoon. And so, I mean, every kid grew up reading Harry Potter too, and every kid that was in a miserable family situation wanted to escape, just like Harry, and do whatever, problematic stuff with the books aside. Back then, it was definitely one of those I can't wait to get out of here and touch my wand, and then you end up just and doing the exact same thing in a very different way. So
you're a wizard, Harry.
I'm a wizard. What are you doing to that? Magic. Leave me alone.
It's magical. You wouldn't understand.
Leviosa.
It's magical, all right.
more like a curse, dude.
Well, going back to the book here, so 2 questions I have about this. Number 1, being that it's a Clive Barker book, where did the horror come in? Because
wasn't horror
page 1.
Well, actually, so it's actually. It is it's very palatable for non-horror folks, but there are some distinctly very gothic horror tropes. The tortured soul villain was one of the guys, Christopher Carrion, and he's this mottled, shriveled looking man who can only breathe in nightmares, who has like a tank built around his head where like liquid nightmares swirl around and sustain him. So I say there's no horror, but like he's one of the principal villains, and in true Gothic fashion, he's this tragic, doomed character that we eventually sympathize with. Dude, and his mother is this horrible figure who entraps people as puppets and like hems them into her dress made of skin. So yeah, there's maybe some horror elements. Now that I think about it, yeah, maybe okay. Maybe there's some horror elements. It's a great series. It's only 3 books.
It's just a fun, mystical horror to it. Like it's on par with Sandman.
Yes, I might have to check this out. Yes, sir. Do it. You won't regret it. Abarat's fantastic. For those readers, do not settle for the trade paperback or like just the mass distribution paperback. Clive actually custom painted all of the artwork for the books. Okay, so you're going to want to find like the deluxe or like the larger editions because they're all hand painted. All the characters are. So it's a really beautiful volume.
Cool.
Yeah.
Second question. Being that this was Clive Barker and you were in an overprotective childhood, how the fuck did you even hear about it to get your hands on it?
Yes. Honestly, my parents, so like they just didn't.
Public library?
No, they just, it was a road trip to Sarasota. They bought some books. My poor stepmom, God bless her, just like read just enough to just get into something and then didn't read enough to like, oh, well, this offends my sensibility. So like that same trip, teenage boy bought a copy of like Tiger Beat, but then that book as well, or like bought like the J, like those like pop culture magazine things, and then that. So it's just a complete scattershot of just media. No real rhyme or reason to it. There's one thing to be overbearing. It's another to actually be good at being overbearing, and that's a vital distinction.
I wonder, does she ever ask you about the book later on? Like, oh, how's that book going? And you're like, good.
It's fantastic. It's shaping parts of myself I didn't even know were there, ma'am.
Who was the author again? I don't know. Shelf Silverstein or something.
That's the thing. They wouldn't have even connected Clive Barker to Hellraiser or anything like that. I don't think they would have put 2 and 2 together, to be totally honest with you. It's just another name on the page for them. They're yuppies. So like my stepdad and my mom are like religious fundies. And then because she's divorced, she was the one who cheated. My mother was. So I think she was wrestling with a lot of guilt and stuff. And there's those people who kind of come in to faith who are like fundamentally just fucked and like need just a complete reset. And some people turn to some things, others turn to others. She turned to that. And so I spent a lot of time on her side, like very like fundy experience. But my dad and stepmom were just very yuppie. Very much like 80s, 90s. I have my briefcase to do business. It's not like my parents. Cooler. So it's just it's kind of like a very strange diversity that there's kind of on both sides of the spectrum. And where one side would say no, the other side would say yes, but not really understanding why they did what they did. It's kind of a weird situation.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about your parents not even being able to tie Clive Barker's name to Hellraiser. I'm wondering, did you at the time, or did you just pick up the book randomly, or did you recognize that he was related to Hellraiser?
Got read on the dust jacket. I always. I mean,
well, look at you being observant.
Trolling the aisles of Blockbuster. I knew about Hellraiser. I wanted to watch it, but that's a no-no. Blockbuster was the great equalizer, where like you could be made aware of content without ever even knowing what it is, as long as it had like a provocative enough cover.
Right.
There's that one kind of
put the box back on the shelf when they start walking over.
Exactly. There's that one cover that had like the sexy alien. It was like extinct species or like, you know what I'm talking about?
Was it just species?
Yeah, maybe just species. And like, I have no idea what that movie's
about.
It's
funny that we know exactly what it
is. Exactly. That's what I'm saying though. The Blockbuster it was the idea of the cover art was so
and I've never
powerful.
even seen the movie. I just know that just the cover art. Like I've never even seen the movie. Just you describing it, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Exactly. And I guarantee you, in watching it, I've never seen it either. I promise you, it'll be woman without clothes, then alien without clothes, but she'll still have human boobs. And like, I already know what's coming. Like, it's not going to be some revolutionary thing, but the poster remains etched. Yes. All these posters remain. And you know, maybe that would be some of the argument that some of the first introduction would be all these series of very provocative movie posters. That
I was just going to say, it's also speaks well to the person who designed that poster.
Yeah, right. It's very effective.
Yeah. It's not a very like involved poster, but it's certainly in a world. It was
well. That's what good graphic design is. It's very simple, but like it connects with you immediately.
Exactly. I can say I agree, and this is proof in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
So
let's see. Anything else I want to ask about childhood? Did you have any other than the family that we've already talked about? Did you have any other family or friends who were fans of horror?
You know, my Uncle Randall must have been, because for my like 11th, 12th birthday, just got me a full-on xenomorph action figure.
Nice.
I'd never seen Alien. Like, he kind of like, I don't know what this is, but like he was in his 30s. He knew what it was. And so like my parents were like, oh, that's great. I fucking loved the shit out of that thing, dude. That was fantastic.
Okay, teenage years. No, you mentioned the Aberrat. Was that teenage years or was that childhood?
On the cusp, on the edge. Okay. Teenage years, I finally got a car when I was 16, and I was a hellraiser from that point forward in terms of like being able to just go out and drive that little gold Honda Accord anywhere I wanted to, and go see movies and stuff. Ooh, that was a good time. That was when I really exactly. That's when I was really able to like, you know, and these weren't good horror movies I was seeing. We're talking like Final Destination. It's like hang out with your teenage friends, those that I did have, especially at 17, going out with them, seeing like those like really shitty late 2000s horror movies. Mm-hmm. God, we live in such a good glut right now of like A24 highbrow art horror. God, we live in like a great world.
Yeah.
But back then it was definitely more like just schlocky, you know, you got your Abercrombie on and everyone smells like a fucking potpourri basket on meth. And we're all just going out to these god awful fucking movies. God, that was about the time too where Saw was a big thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't really ever into those. Not really. That's one genre of horror I can't get into is the gore porn. No fault to those who enjoy it. It's just ain't for me.
Plot is good. Plot is important too.
Yeah. Plot be hidden different though.
True. So you mentioned Final Destination. Was that a good one or a bad one for you? Or were there other ones that...
They're not good movies, but I love them.
Guilty pleasure. Yep.
I love those stupid movies. I'm trying to think back now to like late 2000 or like mid 2000s horror movies that would have come out because I would have seen them in theaters.
Let's see. There was a
bad crop of them that had like 3D, needless 3D in there.
Jaws.
Yeah, maybe. I know. Like,
Jaws was older, but like, like the Friday the 13th. I think Nightmare had one that was 3D as well. That's still earlier than 2000s though. That's
no, like when I was
Valentine.
Yes, that was one. The Ring. How am I fucking forgetting The Ring? Fundamentally changed me. That's if you were to pick one, that's the one.
How did it change you?
The imagery was just so potent. Mm-hmm. The raininess, the gloom. And I think like, and I did some research on you all ahead of time because that's what you do. And so I was already kind of like trying to think to make sure I didn't want to be a bad guesser. It's like, well, I don't know. Like, but you know, that's where I've kind of self-diagnosed this fascination with doom, with inescapable, not the not the snarling monster or the asylum, but just this concept of being damned from the start. Mm-hmm. And The Ring just does that so well. The figure makes such a great start, and I mean, obviously they end up surviving. I mean, spoiler alert: if you haven't seen it, that's your fault at this point, y'all. But like, most people aren't surviving. But this idea that like you could unravel the mystery, and it doesn't matter that damnation and doom are coming to you.
Yeah, that foreboding, just unavoidable dread of something is going to happen, and you have no control again. Yeah, look at that.
Wouldn't you know, right? You feel like you do because you're unraveling the mystery and you're peeling back the wallpaper and you're learning what happened in the well and all these other these little secret things. But in the end, it just doesn't matter. That's why I felt that The Ring kind of started that off for me. And like really just it's been like a passion with all the horror movies that truly stick with me, and all the horror movies that truly sticks with me. In some way you can find a piece. And that's really, there's nothing too innovative there. I mean, horror, that's always been a thing with horror. We know of the 5 people, 4 will die. Like, we're confident. It's just, will they go ahead and have the 5th one die or not? That's usually, there's almost a predestination in all horror media, or most horror media. But there's movies that just, there's part of that's baked into the format, and there's part of it that some movies that make that the theme. And I love the ones that make that the theme of it, because it is a fascinating space to explore. And even outside of horror, right? How many of our decisions, are predestined? We're already always going to happen.
Well, you mentioned that a second ago. That reminded me of a non-horror movie called Predestination, which is really good.
Yeah, it's the idea that, especially I think those who are ex-faith or who have changed faith or whatever, also wrestle with, if there is something bigger, not saying that there is or isn't, but if there is, how much of our actions are truly our own, how much of it is just going through the dress rehearsal that would be whatever, even those without faith, right? The subconscious is the other piece, the more, the natural biological element. How much of what we do is our own understanding, and how much do our actions really matter? And in horror, especially with The Ring, how much can we change the outcome? How much can we really change the outcome? And that's what's kind of a fascinating idea that's just kind of always stuck with me.
Yeah, I mean, even there are some situations where, like you say, you might have some control over something, but in the end, it winds up being meaningless, because no matter which option you would have chosen, you still would have gotten crushed by the boulder,
Yeah, exactly. And there's, speaking of this House of Horrors, it's kind of a bone chilling idea that I was always designed to buy this particular place, that every path I would take me here. And in turn, when whatever the outcome ends up happening afterwards, it was always going to be that way. Like the future is waiting. The future is waiting for me. The future is waiting for you. The chair you'll sit in, before that you'll die of a heart attack, and when you're 85 in. It's either it hasn't been made yet, but the pieces of it are waiting for you. And then when it is made, and its previous owner sits in it, and then go and has a birthday party and is sitting with their kid in it, the chair is still waiting for you. And it's just this kind of fascinating, macabre, worldview. It's probably not an accurate worldview, but it's kind of interesting to roll your head around in for a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to hear you say that, because I have this print that I purchased a couple years ago now it's like 6 feet wide by like 1.5 feet tall, of some mountain, I think in Africa actually. And it's a really beautiful print. But the thing that I loved about it was just that this mountain, if I remember correctly, it's like the remnants of a volcano, where the stone that was inside, the magma chamber was a harder type of material than the stuff around it. So that as everything else got worn away, what was left was this harder material. But the view of this landscape, it's just got this presence to it. And I've always, I've also had not the best childhood either. And at some point in my childhood, I kind of understood that my adult life was going to be better than my childhood was, and that things were going to continue to get better as I became an adult, as I started to gain independence and start to have the power and the influence over choosing the things that I want in my life that I didn't get to choose before.
Yeah.
And when I saw this, I was already in my late 20s or early 30s. And I saw this and I was just like, wow, that really spoke to me, because it felt like, this fate of, in my future. But the funny thing is, like, for me, that was a positive thing. And here you're talking about it potentially being a negative thing. Like, you don't really know what that presence in your future could be. It could be good or it could be bad.
I think it could be both, because maybe Yosemite is the same way. Yosemite is one of the most beautiful places in the earth. And I've just recently got back there. It's been fresh on my mind. It was also that harder rock. It was destined to be there. Like as
the Devil's Tower.
Exactly. As the rest of the world kind of washed away, it was just waiting for the inevitability of existing. Like it was already there, and it would dominate everything else. So it's also a good thing. I think too, there is a chair out there in which I will die, and I don't know which one it is, and I don't know where it'll be. But I there's no way of possibly knowing. I can't not sit for the rest of my life. So I think it does free you up still to let go of control, in the inverse. It's a terrifying thought, but it also, I think, is this idea that you're going to have to let go. You have to, because there's no other alternative to it.
You know how you, I'm fucking up the quote. One of my favorite authors, Joseph Campbell, again, said this in one of his interviews, and I don't know, I'm guessing he was probably quoting somebody else, but do you know how you turn an involuntary act into a voluntary act?
I don't think I've heard this one.
You lie and say you meant to do that?
That's part of it, but basically he was talking about falling. You know how falling is an involuntary act, and to turn it into a voluntary act, you dive.
You lean into it. I like that.
Yeah.
So it's maybe you don't have control over how it started, but you're going to control how it ends.
Yeah. Oh, that is good. This is a profound one, dude. I bet all your episodes are profound though.
We try.
Yeah. This is some good shit. I'm really excited. I'm really enjoying this conversation, boys.
So are we.
This is fantastic. But anyway, yeah, it's having some ownership of the uncontrollable in our lives. I think that's a fascinating way to look at it.
Yeah. Did you participate in Halloween as a teen?
Yeah, for as long as I could. I was absolutely, in the sauce for as long as I could. Pretty much, I think 16 or 17. And now I'm a dad, so I get to do it all over again.
Right?
So I'm a big kid with them.
It's awesome. I don't have a kid, but I got a nephew, so I can vicariously kind of.
Yes.
Yeah. You just you're like, listen, these are the best places to go. Trust me, you're gonna want to get a pillowcase. It's kind of cool graduating from, child to, the wizened guide of Halloween, the Halloween curator,
the cool uncle.
Yeah, that lady over there, raisins, avoid at all costs.
Exactly, though. But it's so true. It's you get to become almost
an alumni.
Yeah, and you don't have to let go of being a kid. You can still be a kid. It's just you graduate and you get to shepherd someone else and give them a slightly better iteration and hope that maybe they'll
you get the raisins, but you eat them with the chocolate.
That's true.
Yeah, still no. Yeah.
You gotta get those macros.
One raisin, one M&M. One raisin, one M&M.
This sounds dangerously like moderation, and I don't like it.
This is true horror. That's a true.
It's not about moderation, damn it. Halloween's about a tummy filled entirely with chocolate and peanut butter.
You're damn right. This man speaks the true.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. Rick and Morty reference.
Well, technically, it would have been a Cloud Atlas. Rick and Morty
Atlas first.
Both.
Yeah. Do you happen to remember any of your costumes from teenage years in Halloween?
Honestly, it's good. It's such a cop out, but no. Like I truly just have almost no memory. Period. Like it's
not every question's gonna hit.
Yeah.
You never know.
Yeah, I live almost entirely in the present. I could tell you like the past 2 years what I've dressed up as. I did Dr. Doolittle with a bunch of Beanie Babies, and I did a corporate drone where I cut up an old work uniform and put a work headset on. So capitalism. It's fun. Right. I like working the rest of my life.
That is scary. That is a very scary costume. What are you? Your future.
Inevitability, child.
No.
Dad, I don't like this.
Yeah, right. Other than the dreams of falling out of a tree and losing your teeth, do you have any other scary dreams as a teen that you remember?
Those have stayed, and those are the only ones I have. Like that's truly that I think that really covers the gamut in terms of just all of the stuff I've continually lived with, especially the teeth one. I fucking hate teeth. In terms of things I'm truly scared of now and make me uncomfortable, teeth make me visually uncomfortable. White ones, the nice ones, all the ones in between. I just truly do not like teeth.
Have you ever seen Channel Zero?
No. Is it going to be teeth involved? Because I'll probably say
it's a show on Shudder. It's actually pretty cool. It's like episodic, but also serial, and just kind of one of those weird mystery shows. Like, what the hell is going on in this small town with weird shit? Like a monster made of teeth. It's a humanoid form, and it's just comprised entirely of teeth.
I don't like that.
Okay, so there's your warning. Stay away from that show then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no me gusta. I don't like whatever that show is doing. I don't like it.
It's interesting. I wonder why teeth make you uncomfortable.
Because they've been in my nightmares all this time. I've never had a cavity. I've been a good tooth boy. Not that there is such thing as a good tooth or a bad tooth boy, but I've been relatively diligent with my own teeth. But it's one of those things where I just don't like them. I fundamentally don't.
Oh yeah, you've had enough.
What I'm wondering is, go ahead.
You've had enough inspiration with the recurring dreams for years. I was going to say, I would think by this time you would hopefully have gotten like a hold of maybe lucid dreaming. If you've had this dream so many times, you can just be like, oh yeah, the teeth falling out thing again. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, you would think so. And I've actually tried to lucid dream before, because I did an episode on it for our Paranormal Monday night. I really did try to lucid dream, and I'm not ever able to maintain the focus. It's one of those things where I'm constantly trying to get mastery over myself with ADHD. So it's constantly trying to like grab the reins and steer myself, that with lucid dreaming, I'm automatically thinking of something else the minute I try. It's unfortunate. One of these days I'll be able to do it. I had a friend of mine who could, and would vividly dream and would swear up and down that they had true lucidity while dreaming and could control their space and could astrally project. But me, no dice.
I can do it sometimes, but it's a mixture. Sometimes I recognize it, sometimes I don't. Basically, the first thing is I have to recognize that I'm dreaming, and then once I recognize it, then I can maybe control it. But in the last few years, my subconscious has kind of started to outsmart me in that it creates situations that if I'm close to recognizing that it's a dream, it starts turning the dream into something that'll piss me off, because it knows that when I get mad, I'll just wake up.
Oh boy.
So rather than letting me, take control over it and do what I want with it, it's like, no, I'm just going to piss you off. Fuck you.
Fuck you, young man.
Yeah. The reason that I'm wondering about the whole thing about teeth making you uncomfortable is obviously, yes, there's the easy connection to it just being a reminder of your dream, but there could be other interpretations too. And that's what I was kind of mulling over.
Yeah.
In real life, had you had any experiences in real life as a teen that actually scared you?
Honestly, I don't think.
If not, that's fine.
I don't think so. There's been a couple times where I've been home and I thought I could hear someone in the house, which I didn't. I always thought like, that's scary. There's someone being in your house. That's real spooky. But then, like, when you are suspecting that someone might be trying to break in and stealthily maneuver against you in your space, that is very scary. It turns out it wasn't. Turns out it was one of the dogs at the back door. But like, I just straight up like had a knife and was like slinking towards the back door and like trying to meta game what would be the best strategy. Like, do I go for the Achilles tendon right away? Like, just like it went all the way there. And that was, it was obviously a big old false alarm, but you don't really realize how scary that is. And I've told stories about home invasions. And I'm always like, and then he crept into our home.
Like, hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going. Bye. Ring. But like, I've told stories about home invasions or like killers who would go in and sneak into homes as part of their like escalating madness. And I was like, oh, and then he broke in. How scary is that? But I'm like, no, like it truly is. It's nightmare fuel when you really think about it.
Right.
So interesting.
Was there ever a time in your teenage years when you felt completely calm, safe, or at bliss?
I think being able to drive and get out of the house and having my own agenda, like a Friday night, even if it wasn't hanging out with the friends, being able to just have my own agenda was always just huge. Having a space that was my own and being able to like put together a plan to separate myself and divorce myself from
Agency.
Exactly. The incredible, wild, wacky, fun world of Agency. I totally agree with you.
All right, let's jump into adult years then. Any horror media that really jump out to you in your adult years?
Yeah, I mean, in my adult years, I was finally able to watch a lot of the classics, so to speak. Mm-hmm. The Shining will always be one of my number one picks because it just truly is an incredible piece of media that speaks to so much. Adult years too, Hereditary just completely mind fucked me. I'm a different person having watched it. Like fundamentally, and that's the same with The Shining. Both of those wrestle with exterior oppressive elements working in opposition to, and that sense of doom, that sense of damnation from the start. All these elements are present.
Yeah, and it's the dread from the start that you don't even realize was from the start until afterwards. Unless, and I'm curious about this one, you being into true horror and real life macabre things. Did you also notice the Payman sigil from the very beginning? Like, wait, I know that one. That's Payman.
So I actually didn't. Ashamedly, I had no idea. And even I watched that having done the show. Like, I truly didn't know about a lot of the Goetica, a lot of the keys of Solomon and the more highbrow arcana until far too late.
Yeah, I mean, he's not one of the main ones. It's not like, he's like Astaroth or Marbus or anything. But I did notice the format. Like, that's a Goetia sigil. I know that one.
Yeah. And it's so obvious now. But I just think for those, I think even those who are like drenched in the occult may not even picked up on it because you're just not expecting it. You don't think it's that kind of movie.
And it was very.
It truly comes out of left field.
Yeah.
Even though everything's so on the head.
I know I haven't seen it, but I know Chris has also said there are things about that movie where they're intentionally sort of keeping things in the background and not necessarily putting it right in your face. So I'm wondering if those things that you're referencing are also things that were not intentionally, put in your face to shove it in your face kind of thing.
Like the naked people.
The nudies. They're not wearing any clothes either.
I can see his painter. It's scary.
It's incredible.
So when you mentioned that you're not the same after watching Hereditary, what do you mean by that?
I think that movie just really shook my noodle up. And because I know you haven't seen it, but like a lot of the motifs, it's a person who builds doll houses and like models. And this idea that we are just in a dollhouse. Our own existence is so small, so confined, and is so viewable from the outside. I grew up religious, so it's my experience. My mileage varies now very differently, but it is still this idea of something from the outside monitoring you, and what it truly means to be a small ant in a cosmic sense. It changes the scope in which you view things. And that's what Hereditary at least did for me. I know it's probably not the intended metaphor that they were going for, but it changed at least my perspective because we always were like, oh, the big man in the sky's watching out for us. We're like, oh, there's demons out there. But like the idea of a demon is truly just like terrifying because they're viewing in on the dollhouse of your life. And it's just a matter of how they will fuck you over rather than like, can I? And you just a lot of demonology just doesn't touch on that level of just true mind fuckery. But what can I say?
Yeah, I never thought about that aspect of the film, but you're right. It is kind of, especially the way all right, spoilers, people, if you haven't seen it. I'm sorry, it's been out for how many, 5 years now? But the family and the cult and the way they're orchestrating the whole reincarnation of Payman through Charlie, it really does have a whole overarching controlling force over the whole dollhouse that is their lives kind of feel.
Yeah, and it'll really just absolutely mind fuck you when you realize that every time you probably already knew it, but like every time that the Payman is present in the world, it's with a lens flare. Like when the mother is having like the jeweler's loop on and she's looking at her scopes. So like that, it's we're not even seeing the demon present. We're seeing its gaze moving
like
through. Yeah, it's just looking through the space. So when its attention zeroes in on the door and then vanishes, that's, from the outside of the dollhouse, that malignant force, watching and moving and manipulating itself through as you can, entirely in a controlling sense. It's just a very fascinating look. Mm-hmm. But anyway,
something you said about it's not how they fuck. It's not if they fuck you over, but how. Kind of reminds me of. Are you familiar with the monkey paw?
Yes.
Concept.
Yep. Again, doom and damnation from the start, and a complete lack of control. Even though you think you have a tool that can fix everything, but anyway, with the monkey's paw, that's a really great comparison. Holy shit. Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'm also thinking of is that another aspect of this lack of control is intellect. Like, you can't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. There's boundaries to the things that we can conceive of because we don't know all the possibilities or all the different outcomes and things like that. There's there's limitations.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, we could continue asking about other media in your adult life, but I think we've already seen the common themes here. We've also talked about some of the stuff as an adult in terms of Halloween, Dr. Dolittle, although I'm curious if that was just like something to please your kids, or was there like a personal...
It was just last minute. It was completely last minute looking for something to do, to be honest with you.
Mm. Okay. We've already talked about scary dreams as an adult. Anything actually terrify you as an adult in real life?
The dark still makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know what it is about it, but the dark makes me very uncomfortable even today. I couldn't tell you why. Couldn't really explain, the how behind it. It's just I know what about it makes me uncomfortable, and I can't stop being uncomfortable with it. Mm. I don't like not being able to see, all that kind of stuff. Makes me very scared boy. All work and no play makes me very scared boy.
Next two questions I want to ask you are going to cover your entire life, but I'm going to give you the questions at the same time because it could be the same answer for both, or it could be two different answers. Yeah. First question is, what's your favorite movie? And then the second one is, what movie have you watched more times than any other?
Ooh, and is this external to horror or just with...
Yeah, correct, any genre.
Any genre.
God. Oh, man. This is a real brain teaser, I would say. Lord of the Rings is like, I know it's mini movies, but Return of the King is just hits. It be hitting different, my dude. It be hitting so good. It's such a profound movie, and it really just does speak to almost the opposite. That's why I think I really like it. They do have agency. They do have control. And when all else, when that doom is there, they're able to snap it away at the last moment. By no virtue of what the characters did at all either. Sometimes it's the anti-doom, right? The miracle as anti-doom is almost why I would like it as well. It's not all about doom and gloom. I do like too this idea of complete unearned redemption.
Sometimes you get lucky.
Yeah. Sometimes you just get lucky, and the small little man who looks like a penis brought to life, sometimes he just falls in the lava with the ring, and that's all that it takes. You created the right environment, and the miracle took over.
And sometimes you're stuck on a rock after the penis dude fell in the lava, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna die. But then burbs.
What? Where were these birds earlier? Frodo muttered.
There's been a whole thing on this. He explained it.
I'm not getting into all this. That's a weak man's argument. I like to argue about birds, but
birds aren't really
But exactly, it's all a conspiracy. So I've seen that movie a fucking ton. I love that whole series, but Return of the King is the big standout.
Yeah, that is the best one.
It's just so damn good. But I've seen The Shining a lot as well, and I really do. I know it's like, well, that's the horror answer, but I truly do have a profound passion for The Shining. It really is just one of the best movies, in my opinion, ever made, and it speaks because there's so many different elements. It talks about the Native American tragedy in America. It talks about the idea of life as maze. It talks about the idea of madness and isolation and all these things. Your boy be liking it. Your boy be down with it.
Yeah.
Yeet indeed, my friend. Yeet indeed.
Life is a maze. That also ties back to control or lack of control.
Life is a highway, and I want to ride it all night long.
All night long. Yeah. Yeah, by the way, we heard you singing, what the hell was the song?
It was Muffin Man?
Let's hear it for the boy.
Yeah.
No, well, that too. At the start, before we started recording.
I'm kind of stunned. I didn't happen to spit out any Whitney, dude. I'm a huge Whitney Houston nerd. So
they're making a movie about her.
I know. Trust me, I'm very excited. I'm supremely excited for the Whitney Houston motion picture.
Indeed. Capital.
Off topic, but what do you love about that?
She be hidden different, dude. She's just in an absolutely incredible range, and you can hear the passion and the humanity in her voice. That's what it's just so. I can't express how much, like, it's always just shitty pop, but it's my kind of shitty pop, and okay. I like it.
Okay. For the two movies you mentioned, Lord of the Rings and The Shining, was that for favorite or for more the thing you've watched more times than any other?
I've watched Return more times than anybody, but The Shining's my favorite. I mean, I've watched Return like 8 or 9 times, and I've watched The Shining several times because I actually wrote a college paper on it. Okay, but Shining is like my if I go watch a movie forever, it would be that one. But Return to the King is one I've just watched a whole bunch, especially like, and growing up without control, that one just resonates because it is the hope of the miracle that comes through.
How about a least favorite movie?
Oh my God. So my wife's not going to be happy with me. But, what can you do? That Harry,
it's Twilight, isn't it?
No, so it's nothing so trope as that. I've been watching a lot of. We've been calling it Hallmark again. So in October, October's my month, and I watch all the horror movies. And I make her watch a curated list of horror movies. And in turn, the divine trade-off is for November and December.
And December?
December. Yeah. That's
poor man.
Listen, it's passion for the person who's the most important.
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. So we've been watching just a gaggle, if you will, a whole host of the most of horror movies. They are horrific, but watching a lot of Hallmark, and I gotta say, I'm straight up not having a good time, bro. There's a couple where I'm like, they're okay, but for the most part, it's brutal. Like, it really is just mind numbing.
Ooh, I have an idea. So
that's what y'all should do. That's the real horror, dude. Horror makes us happy. Not all of it. I can tell you that right now. Yeah. The name of this podcast is a lie. Not all horror makes us happy. Some of it just completely erodes our faith in existence.
Potentially because you don't have the control over watching the Hallmark movies.
Almost. Yeah. I would argue there's too much control. Everything is so sanitized that it's just.
No, I mean, you don't have control.
That's true too. Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
You're like Alex in Clockwork Orange with the eyelids peeled open.
Yes. It's like pulling teeth, which is terrifying for me.
But all right, so here's an idea on how to cope with the Hallmark movies. Just make a game out of it. Check the eyes of every single one of the actors and look if you can just see that look of my soul is dead inside, because I'm sure you'll find it in 2 or 3 of them.
So I actually have a little bit game from amongst myself of trying to find plot holes, because they're always so easy that you feel really accomplished.
You win that game every time.
Oh, well, why didn't you mow the lawn before you went? Look at it, like just
continuity.
Just dumb snide, like, it's. Oh, you're real fun at parties. Yeah, that's why I'm keeping it in my brain, because I know it's not actually fun. But because if you can predict the plot, that you're not watching it for the plot. So I just like to watch.
I mean, you could predict half a Hallmark movie's plots before you even watch the first minute.
All of them. My favorite genre of Hallmark movie ones are the ones where I really don't like the guy. Like, I profoundly think. Well, no, like there's a couple where I'm like, okay, he's pretty cool. Like, he's a bro. Like, let's hear it for him. But like, there's other ones where I was watching this one yesterday, where the protagonist, like the hunky man, was this bespectacled HOA president. Like, who in their rightful mind is going to fuck the president of the HOA? Unless you're trying to get out of something, But like, I kept thinking, okay, so he's our red herring. Where's the real hunk?
Was this written by someone who's an HOA president?
It must have been. It had to have been, because he is the most he's traipsing around in her bushes, measuring the height of her nutcrackers.
There's so much innuendo in that sentence.
Exactly though. But I was like, okay, so this guy can't be it. Like, there has to be somebody better. But no, there was no. I was expecting the owner of the Christmas tree lot to come in, or some other assorted Christmas stud. Mm-hmm. No Christmas stud appeared.
Yeah, he sounds like the guy who would be the anti, end movie hookup guy, like the guy who's dumped for the better guy. But no, that was the one. He invites
himself into her home, and he's like, and he's just
he's president of the HOA. He can do that. It's just my neighborhood, bitch.
So what you're telling me is that they actually wrote a movie where the incel gets the girl.
Yes. and what's worse is I can tell, in the sequel that happens only in my mind.
Put it on Hallmark for that.
The sequel that goes in my mind would be on Shudder, because she breaks up with him and he meticulously stalks her in a fun Christmas themed stalking serial killer slasher romp.
Oh my god, does he get her in the end? Does the stalker get the girl? What the fuck is that?
It's brutal. I'm just these are all the behaviors.
I think you need to write that sequel.
Right?
It already happens it's already happened in my brain. For now, that's where it'll live. But one day I'm going to make it where
I mean literally make the characters the same names. Make it.
Well, I
don't know if you can do that.
all the accompanying side pieces are your typical ensemble cast, where you have the hyper aggressive neighbor, and then one of the other neighbors who's just a little grumpy but a real softie. So doing a slasher that a slasher parody of a Hallmark movie would be hilarious.
I wonder if you could hire the actors to play those kids.
I guarantee you it's going to be on budget for sure.
Well, yeah.
Put a disclaimer, that not representing any characters or whatever. How close could you get it without getting sued? You know what I mean?
You could even be on the nose and say welcome to Hall Spot Village. And
yeah, right.
Just
if the guy's name is
on the nose enough.
Dan Fraser or something, make his name Fan Drazier.
Exactly. I sure do love living in Hall Spot Village. This is great. Everything's predictable. We all love living here. And then it just slowly erode to a slasher movie. It would be awesome.
Fair use. Maybe it's
just sounds like you got something there,
right?
If this whole streaming thing doesn't work out, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make my Hallmark slasher movie.
I'm on board. I am a fan. Right. I'm with it.
I'd pay $1 to see that.
Deck the halls this season.
Do you see any common threads about what kind of horror that you like? Cannibalism, occult, metaphysical, supernatural?
I like cult stories. I love a good cult story. And I don't slashers are more just popcorn movies for me. Yeah. I do supernatural, but in the sense of the unknowable. Again, speaking to Hereditary, the true you truly can't begin to wrap your mind around what's happening. Right. I love that shit. I don't like when they explain everything to you. I love just I think that's more terrifying. Even if you get to see the monster, not understanding its motivation, because you can't act against it. It's speaking of the dark. If you can't see the totality of the thing, you have no idea what its plan is, and you can't do anything to stop it.
Well, I think we already kind of talked about that stuff, but what about the cult stories? How does that tie in?
I just like cults. They're my favorite piece of true crime media. I really profoundly love cults. I love exploring other religious ideas. And so cults in particular, I like going, oh, okay. So you took that verse and you used that to do these. I get why people join cults. I don't think there's any idiots when it comes to joining cults. Everyone has their reasons. Everyone has their motivation. I just really enjoy watching people create religion, because I really am a sucker for the trappings of religion. I still love Catholic robes and the Pope's cool hat and hymns and stuff like that. It's got such a neat vibe that I love when people manufacture religion and tradition and like why people fall into it. I find it to be I could talk about cults all the time because I find them to be infinitely fascinating. I don't find them scary. I just find them fascinating. In fact, I have the Heaven's Gate cult, the one who did the guy with their Nikes on. I have their manifesto. Like I actually own a copy of it. It's in my bookshelf, and cool. I've read through all of it. I just like cults. Me like cult.
Cult good.
Cult good. Cult not good, but cult good for me. Cult me, white cult.
I mean, the one thing that you mentioned about using particular verses to do this or that, that's kind of like a power control thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. The loving the hymns, the robes, the traditions.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a comfort thing.
I think it could be. I think it's it takes a lot of the unknown out of it. This is how we do things. This is how we approach the divine. This is how we, ornament ourselves. This is how we speak to the divine. Because the divine is, as a concept, even for, atheists or whatever, like just the idea of the divine as concept is almost unfathomable. Like, I know everyone's like, oh, big sky guy, get mad at me. But like a truly infinite thing is impossible to even begin to imagine, like, let alone reckon with, let alone appease, let alone understand the plans or machinations of.
Yep.
Well, what you said about this is how we do this. I mean, that's interesting because it's a semblance of control.
Yes.
Over
a god.
Yeah.
Over the infinite.
Or at least your relationship to it.
Yes. Yes. It provides context. And provides, like you said, that valuable control, which in reality is not control at all. It's just a weird little prancing about of small ant people.
But it's a concept that you think you have of control.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, normally here we would stop to talk about the common themes that keep coming up in the call and ask why it is that you might like those things. I think the common themes are pretty self-evident, and it, as well as why it is that you like those things. I mean, control is better than not having control. It's a pretty basic primal desire almost. I guess the only last question that I can think of then is why horror? Because couldn't there be any other number of genres that trigger those kinds of fears or emotions?
I
mean, a war story,
Yeah, I mean that's a really fantastic point. I guess I would say that doom, that element of doom, isn't present in others besides dystopian science fiction. The idea of true, unmitigatable, unescapable doom is not really ever present anywhere but horror.
True. And if it's present so much to the point where it's noticed, then it almost becomes horror.
Yeah, and so that part I think is why I'm so attached to horror as a thing, is because it does have that really kind of fascinating piece that I think a lot of other media just can't even touch on. So
I think a good word there is scale.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yes. God, that's why you're a host of the show, because you're so damn smart.
Well, and then when I think of scale, then I think about ego versus the sublime. I don't know if you're familiar with the word sublime.
No, I'd love to. If you could fill me in, though.
It's a band, and they were popular in the 90s.
Well, hell yeah. Okay.
There's that. The sublime is, if you've ever had an experience of, usually the most often I think that most people experience is it when you if you're walking down a narrow hallway or something like that, and then you turn a corner and all of a sudden you're in this huge room and you're just like, whoa, like you're just dwarfed by the immensity of this big thing that you were just introduced to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. And that's, speaking of horror, I fucking love those, whatchamacallit, liminal spaces. I think maybe for some of those same reasons. But anyway.
Potentially. Yeah. Liminal spaces sometimes do a similar thing in that when you feel that moment, it's because I guess you could say you're more focused on the space rather than yourself. It's the shrinking of your own ego in relation to, like, the word sublime comes from the same root as sublimate.
Yeah.
And sub, underneath, lower. And so it's like minimizing yourself in comparison to this massive thing. And I'm wondering if there's something about that.
Yeah, I would probably argue that's absolutely a thing, because the totality and the size and the scope of it, I think, is very fascinating.
The thing that's also interesting to me is, at least in my experience, when I'm having a sublime moment, like we've talked in this call about, lack of power or loss of power. Obviously, there's that element when you're having a sublime moment of, this thing is so much more massive than I am, bigger than I am. I obviously have no control here. But there's also a moment where you almost completely forget about that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. And it's again, the void and the magnitude of what it all can mean, I think, can have almost two opposite effects, where you're so enthralled by it that you almost forget your own sense of scope and your own sense of space within it. And then there's also that sense where you actively recognize, I can't fathom the size of what's going on here.
It's almost comforting in a way.
But I'm a part of it.
Yeah, but I'm a piece of it. And that's how I think a lot of people approach spirituality. I'm just a piece of dust in the wind, right? But then I'm also in the cynical sense, like, nothing I do will ever matter. Fuck this. But there's also like, nothing really matters, because after all, I'm just a piece of dust in the wind.
Back to the singing.
Let's go.
Ouroboros.
Of course. Exactly. Everything comes full circle.
Yes. Is there anything that you've thought of during this call that might be relevant that we didn't talk about? Maybe something came to mind and then the conversation made a left turn?
I know I probably dragged the conversation left turn about 9 different times. But I think for me, I think it really does. It puts my childhood into perspective. I really hadn't kind of come up with it until I had said it, was that because there was almost no control whatsoever, because all of it was so entirely out of my own sense of control, my own space, my own locus of focus, so to speak. I think it does kind of put a lot of that into some really interesting perspective, that much of what I'm interested in comes from that. A lot of the sense of doom comes from getting ready to go to my parents' house from school and knowing I'm just in for something stupid and have to deal with some bullshit. And being unable to stop it, having to show up and grin and bear it nonetheless. So perhaps that has some piece to play in all of it. Why I continue to be drawn to this kind of medium, and why I continue to be so fascinated by it, perhaps has something to do with that. Who knows?
Could be.
Think you're onto something there?
Yeah. It's interesting that, in early childhood development, it's pretty well known that stability in a child's early life is extremely important. There's a number of different little arcs of development that occur, from birth. They're really short, first 6 months, first 12 months, first 18 months. And then, there's other ones leading up to a couple years, and they kind of get larger as we age. There are fewer differences between hitting, for example, 40 and 50 and 50 and 60 than there were when from 0 to 10. But stability is definitely an important one.
Yeah.
At an early age.
And that's that complete lack of it, I think, as it continues to make me fascinated with that idea. Like, I can't stop thinking about it. Now that I've been talking about it, it's kind of all I can roll my noodle over.
The rest of the day, you're just like, wow.
Oh, this is great. Fantastic. Awesome. I can't wait to think about this forever.
You're welcome.
Well, going back to what we said earlier about, how do you change a fall into a conscious action and dive, make it, lean into it.
Yeah. Because we have no control except over how we perceive and how we directly act, I suppose. If we're even supposing we have that kind of control to begin with anyway.
Oh, it's like the penguin from the Mind Palace Ice Cave from Fight Club. Slide.
What the fuck are you talking about?
What is it?
It's like the penguin.
This is a legit reference. You can look it up. No, there's Edward Norton's character has like a mnemonic device where he goes into his happy place and it's a cave, and there's always this penguin there that's just like, just slide. Don't fall. Slide.
Oh, okay, I'll take it. I take back my overly harsh critique. The penguin just hit me different.
Yeah, the penguin is a bit random. I say random things on this show sometimes.
I love it.
Yeah. I didn't catch the Fight Club reference. I was picturing like the claymation. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there's like a claymation video game that's almost like Primal Rage.
Oh yeah,
I was
Clay
picturing
Fighters.
Yes.
I remember that one.
with I think there's a penguin in there that does a slide.
Maybe.
Anyway.
Oh, maybe it's all connected. Ouroboros again.
The big penguin wants you to think that.
Yeah.
Fucking stupid. Just
I got
big penguin over here.
Big Chungus.
God. We live in the world Big Penguin wants us to live in.
Just feed me fish.
All of a sudden, there's a knock at my door. Oh my God, it's Big Penguin! He's listening!
Big Penguin! Your next doesn't be on here. What are you afraid of? Well, honestly, giant penguins. Now that I've listened to your show.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Triggered something primal.
Something penguinal. God almighty.
All right. Well, I don't know where to go with that.
It's something penguinal.
Yes. Well, thank you for your time. It's been real fun talking to you.
Thank you for letting me penguin the time with you, fellas. I appreciate you.
Yes.
This is fantastic. I really did just have a blast. And I love learning more about this kind of stuff. So this was really, I think, very helpful. And in terms just for me to reconcile with my own shit, to be honest with you. So thank you for this.
All right. Yeah.
It's rare you kind of have a guest spot that kind of changes your perception on stuff. But this one doobie Scooby-Doo in it. So
Indeed.
Thank you.
Doobie-doobie-doo.
Indeedly.
Actually, wasn't that another penguin reference?
Oh my God, I think it was. Yeah, the creepy penguins from the commercials. Doobie, doobie, doo.
It's all downhill from here.
It's penguins all the way down.
God.
This has been a fun episode about penguins.
Way more aquatic birds than I thought, but I'll take it. Like you said, slide on.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Slide on.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you to anybody out there listening. Please do come visit us at horrormakesushappy.com. We've got a list there of people that we'd like to interview. If there's somebody that you'd like to have added to the list, let us know. If you can help us get in touch with anybody on the list, let us know. You can also support us on Patreon. You can buy us a coffee. There's merch, all kinds of fun stuff. If you can't do any of that, then tell a friend.
Then bah humbug to you.
Yes.
just kidding. Tell a friend. No bog humbugs.